Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Boston Plastic Recycling webinar series. Today's chapter will be concentrated on the eco-profiles for recycled plastic. So we'll have a tight agenda for today. We will have just 1 hour of webinar. First of all, we'll have a small opening objective of the webinar and a PRIMUS explanation. Afterwards, we'll have a holistic view of the LCAs and eco-profiles. And afterwards, we'll see the eco-profiles of the PRIMUS project. And the last part, we'll have a roundtable asking the presenters different questions related to LCAs, eco-profiles, and eco-profiles of the PRIMUS project. If you have any question, please write it down on the chat, and then we will answer all the questions at the end. So, the Boston Plastic Recycling Series is a series of webinars that are focused on the latest updates on the good practices of plastic recycling. So this is funded by the PRIMUS Project, that is with other R&D projects. In this case, is just the PRIMUS Project presenting. And we are working on shaping the future of the circular economy for plastic. So today's objective of the webinar is exploring the role of eco-profiles in determining the environmental impacts of plastic, and we'll examine the different eco-profiles that have been elaborated in the PRIMUS project in life cycle databases and how they have been applied to our project. So in the first part, I'll be presenting the PRIMUS objectives. I'm Carolina Mejia, a Senior Innovation Project Manager at Mondragon Corporation, and inside the PRIMUS project, I'm the Manager of Communication, Dissemination, and Exploitation. So I have experience in circular economy, Industry 4.0, and smart cities R&D projects. I have an architecture degree and different masters in urbanism, innovation, and project management. Now I'm working as a Senior Innovation Project Manager at Mondragon Corporation for the past 8 years, boosting the R&D technologies of more than 200 companies, as well as leading Mondragon Environmental Forum. So checking the objectives of our PRIMUS project, the PRIMUS project is an European project that is helping improve the plastic recycling industry with new polymer recycling technologies for the automotive and home appliances applications. So we have 4 demo cases, 2 for the automotive sector and 2 for the home appliances sector. We are 12 partners. We started this project in May 2022 with a duration of 3 years. And well, as you can see, we are located in different parts of Europe. PRIMUS at a glance is checking the main objectives of PRIMUS. So first of all, we want to create a quality and safe recyclate through technological innovations. We want to support the use of recycled plastic as safe raw materials with safe traceability as well. We are going to demonstrate different recycled plastic in 4 demo cases in automotive and home appliances. And we are going to support recyclates market with advanced mechanical recycling, debomination pretreatments, and analytics. So if you want to check a little bit more of the different aspects of our project, you can join our website, or you can check our previous webinars as well to learn more about it. So as I was saying, we have 4 demo cases, 2 in the automotive sector and 2 for the home appliances. So the first pilot is the automotive interior, led by Meyer, upgrading recycled PC and ABS. Then we also have a second automotive pilot regarding cooling circuits, the internal part of the car, with recycled PP and EPDM to create the TPV. Then in the third pilot, we have a refrigerator to refrigerator food contact demonstrator, upgrading the recycled heaps from the refrigerator liners to a new refrigerator liner. And the fourth pilot is washing the machine door seal that we are grading EPDM as well. So if you want to learn a little bit more of a project, you can join our stakeholder group, and you can follow this QR code or join our website. So moving forward to the second part of the agenda, Julia Cigarello and Jonas Hopman will present the LCAs and Ecoprofiles. So Julia, thank you for being here. Julia is a sustainability consultant and communication at Greendelta. She is leading the work package of sustainability assessment in the PRIMUS project. She holds a Master in General Engineering from Dahan University. She started her own project startup on data sharing for LCA and now works for Greendelta for nearly 4 years as a consultant, helping private clients, but also in research projects like Primus. Jonas Hopman, hello Jonas, thank you for being here as well. He's a sustainability consultant and researcher at Greendelta. Inside the PRIMUS project, he is in the sustainability assessment team, and he holds a PhD in molecular chemistry from the University of Bremen and University of Rennes. Before working at Greendelta, Jonah did a postdoc in Nagoya and Groningen, and Jonah decided to focus on sustainability and since then follows the MBA program Sustainable Chemistry Management at Greendelta. So thank you both for being here, and please take the control of the presentation and start explaining to us a little bit more about Ecoprofiles.
Super. Very good. Thanks, Carolina. So before we start, maybe let me say a couple of words about Greendelta. So people know Open LCA rather than Greendelta. Greendelta is the company behind the open source project for a lifecycle assessment software called Open LCA, which you might have heard. It's one of the biggest, softwares available in the market for lifecycle assessment in a professional situation. But we are sustainability researchers and consultants, part of the team, and we engage in different European projects, some of which you are seeing currently in the screen. So we focus on plastics in several projects with Primus, Stop specifically for packaging, and so on, Citolub. But also we are in the renewable energy sector with most H2 for hydrogen, hybrids for solar panels, new gen for specifically for new generation of electric cables for high voltage direct currents lines. So we are a bit mixed in content, but definitely on the sustainability work package side, usually leading the sustainability work packages in research projects. And then we, of course, have a big side of software development where our key product is OpenLCA, and we really define our work with open source. But we also work with clients to develop a OpenLCA specifically for them or do a specific applications of sustainability for clients. And we're also database resellers through the platform called OpenLCA Nexus. So we do work with data too. Okay, and I'm here maybe to give a bit of the warm up to what my colleague Jonas is going to introduce afterwards. For those that don't know, we're going to be speaking about life cycle assessment. So Ecoprofiles in the end are sustainability data sets that help us understand better what the sustainability behind recycled plastic are. And we specifically use the technique or the method of life cycle assessment to do this. So life cycle assessment is a technique for assessing the environmental impacts that occur during all stages of a product's life cycle, and we say from cradle to grave. And my colleague's going to be speaking about life cycle stages. He's going to be speaking about cradle to gate, cradle to grave. Basically, we go in life cycle assessment, there's an opportunity to go from raw material extraction to transport, production, distribution to retail, the use phase, and finally end of life, which could be a landfill or incineration or maybe reuse, recycle, etc. So when we speak about cradle to gate, we speak about the start cradle of the extraction of the resources until the production of whatever we're assessing at the plant. So nothing, it cuts there, cradle to gate. We don't continue with transport, use phase, end of life, etc. That's part of that. This is a choice of system boundary that one can make. And then there's the other, let's say the yellow circle here would be cradle to grave, which then takes into account all of the life cycle stages. Okay. And generally, so that you understand that usually the methodology, we've gotten this from a really clear source provided by the GRC. There's 4 phases of an LCA. First, we have to define the goal and scope. That's very important, and generally, life cycle assessment is defined by ISO 14040 and 14044. And the first thing they say is go define goal and scope, and that LCA has 4 different steps that you usually make. In the goal and scope, you decide what are you going to be assessing, what are the results going to be referenced to. That's called the functional unit. And you also describe who's your audience, what's the objective of your study, what database you're going to be using, what methodology, LCIA methods, life cycle impact assessment methods, etc. You then have to collect data. This is the next stage, life cycle inventory. And then this is a bit what we've been doing with Mathilde from Plastic Recyclers Europe, and her stakeholders and network. So we collect data, and then we make models in Open LCA using our databases, and then we get some results. And results are not only in the impact category of climate change. We can have results in many impact categories. So here I'll go a bit through them. Climate change would be the impact category that describes our carbon footprint, which is what we are usually used to, but life cycle assessment can give us impact categories in many other directions. So we're specifically using EF 3.1 and life cycle impact assessment methods from the European Commission. And we're gonna be seeing also results in eutrophication, which is the gradual increase in the concentration of certain minerals like phosphorus and nitrogen in aquatic ecosystems. What happens with eutrophication is that you, in the end, get too much algae that then could absorb too much oxygen, or don't let sunlight go through the surface of the water, and then this affects the ecosystem. Okay, the water ecosystem. We could also look at land use, the amount of land being used, the change from, for example, forest to industry, or forest to agriculture, or agriculture to industry, or industry back to forest. This is also evaluations that can be made through LCA. Resource depletion, how much fossil resources are we depleting from the earth? How much also mineral resources are we depleting from the earth? So maybe mineral resources would be interesting, for example, for batteries, etc. In plastic production, usually the focus would be more on resource depletion in the category of fossil resource depletion. Then acidification, which is the impact category that quantifies the amount that each gas contributes to acid rain, and so on. Water depletion, for example, the water impact, water scarcity impact, and so on. We can also maybe for our assessments, human toxicity and just generally ecotoxicity is something to take into account. But there's other things that we can measure, like, for example, ionizing radiation, etc. And then from here, and just checking the results, the last stage of an LCA defined by ISO is interpretation and iteration in the end. Usually when you see results, then you go back to change some things, or to make some data hotspots better quality, more granular, so that you can better understand where your impacts are coming from. So I think that's all from me, and my colleague Jonas can then take the lead. Thanks.
Yeah, also good morning from my side. I will talk a bit more now about Ecoprofiles themselves, which are one of the main products from our sustainability assessment part in PRIMUS. So if we consider in general, PRIMUS is focusing strongly on plastic. We consider also that we have like circulating a lot of plastics which are fossil based. So you can also see different plastic sorts or polymers being used, but only a small part actually of all the sourced plastics is based from mechanical or chemical recycling. And the focus within PRIMUS is focusing strongly or only on mechanical recycling. If we want to assess like a bit the environmental impacts of producing plastics or using them, we also need data at the end of the day. And to have the data, there is for material which has been primary material, there are Ecoprofiles presented by Plastic Europe already since the late 90s. And they provide you in a cradle to gate fashion data for the life cycle inventory. So to produce a kilogram of a chemical, they will give you all the impacts and all the resources depleted within that. So they are quite known and well used, and they're also the basis for a lot of LCA databases. Additionally, the Ecoprofiles which are there already and have been designed also give a small description on the technology, on the product itself, etc. Additionally, also what they include sometimes is that the inventory, the lifecycle assessment is performed in some of those Ecoprofiles. Yeah. Maybe some people of you know this, as I see some LCA practitioners I hear. This is kind of the overview of Plastics Europe. They have for most chemicals, they have these Ecoprofiles at the end of the day, and you can download them, read it up, and have a look. And also they provide the data which you can later integrate, and they have been the basis for LCA databases ever since. As like, especially for primary production, the capacities or the production sites are rather large. Of course, the data for this has been collected by Plastics Europe, is then being assessed and also distributed to LCA practitioners at the end of the day using that platform. As you can see here also, how does it look like? Classic Ecoprofile, at least the data set, you will see that what you have here in Open LCA, what you take from the environment and what you emit to the environment for here ABS, a kilogram, it's all written down then. Yeah, what the basic logic is, at least for Ecoprofiles in general, and has been quite prominent, is that you set up a methodology describing what you do, what is in the scope of the project, what is not. Here is the example from Plastic Europe. Then per polymer, you will provide an Ecoprofile, which is like a rather long document describing what the polymers, how they are made, what the inventory looks like, and describes also a bit how they're produced. And then additionally, there is kind of the impact assessment, as Julia already described, here using the EF 3.1 method for a quite recent example, and then describing what are the impacts to produce a kilogram of ABS and a kilogram of SAN, with all the impact categories being present here. For us, of course, the scope is a bit different, but the question is very often, why even to have Ecoprofiles? In this case, it's quite good because like if you cover 100% of the production size and have all the data, you have a standardized LCA data at the end of the day, and they can be used for a lot of LCA practitioners, but also for other parts of the industry. It allows you also to benchmark at the end of the day, like your product against the existing standard. And further on, supports also eco-design ideas. If you don't have the data in the LCA world, you will not be able to assess the impact, especially if it's a very specific polymer. You have a lot of lack of data and cannot assess the sustainability, unfortunately. So having all this data is very important. And finally, having the data also supports circular economy and potentially also boosts a bit of your decision making. In the PRIMUS project, if we have a closer look, we had a short look on what is there as existing data, because on PRIMUS we focus strongly on recyclates. And if we have a look on existing Ecoprofiles, it's strongly with primary materials. So these are the ones which are derived from Plastic Europe. You can see we have roughly 19 Ecoprofiles. For secondary, it's a bit more complicated. We have less amount of Ecoprofiles being presented, and also in the databases we use commonly, here's an example Econvent, the focus is strongly not on secondary material. So we have a big data gap that if you want to use like recyclates, you don't have actually the data for the inventory for those data sets. That's very unfortunate, because if you want to become more sustainable in that logic and want to run a scenario with using recyclate as a scenario, you don't have the data. That's why in PRIMUS we focus strongly on to generate this data, and together with Plastic Recycle Europe we did this and focus strongly also here for technical polymers such as HIPS, PP, or ABS. Yeah. And as you, very short notification, the production differs a bit. As you might know, primary plastic production focused strongly on raw material extraction, steam cracking, polymerization, extrusion. Whereas if we look on the secondary plastic production, we work with waste collection, sorting, shredding, separation, and extrusion. And of course, those differ a lot, but at least to keep you in mind that the production ways for sure differ, hence also the impacts will differ. Yeah, this from my side.
Thank you, Jonas. This is quite interesting, and it is a good introduction for the second part of the webinar, that it's the Ecoprofiles in the PRIMUS project. So Jonas will continue presenting part of the second part of the webinar, and I already introduced Jonas, and we have Mathilde Cabot as well on board on the second part. So thank you, Mathilde, for being here. She's a regulatory affairs manager at Plastic Recycle Europe. And inside the PRIMUS project, she leads the regulatory work package. So she holds a master in chemical engineering, specialized in material and processes. Her graduation research on the development of PP recyclates from old household appliances led her to the plastic recycling world. So after working as a plastic engineer at a recycling facility, she is now focused on the chemical legislation as well as on the R&D projects at Plastic Recycle Europe. So Mathilde, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for the introduction, and welcome everyone to the webinar on my behalf. So I will continue on presenting a little bit on how the data collection was performed. But before we do this, I will present in a nutshell what is Plastic Recyclers Europe. Well, we have a specific vision. Our vision is to advance on circularity of plastic by promoting quality plastic recycling and the use of recycled material in high-end products. For this, we have indeed a circular vision to work, of course, on design for recycling, so at the very beginning, at the basis, and then to also try to improve collection, because if we can collect more, then of course we can recycle more plastics. To have improved infrastructure in terms of sorting and also improved processes for recycling, and then boosted the demand in terms of uptake of recyclates. We think that this vision will be empowering the circularity of plastics. If we look at Plastic Recycler Europe, so we are an industry association, so a member-based association. We have more than 200 member companies and organizations that are supporting the transition towards a circular economy. We are established since more than 25 years, and we are organized in different working groups. So it means that we tackle the different waste streams that are currently available. It means, like, for example, packaging or agriculture, construction, and so on and so forth. What is the plastic recycling industry in Europe at the moment? So a bit of facts and figures. So there is more than 850 recycling facilities that represent 12.5 million tons of installed capacity. Quite a few employees, because there is more than 30,000 employees and a turnover of 10.4 billion. If we look at the plastic recycling market and the total installed capacity for plastic recycling, you see that it's still a growing trend. It's growing year by year, so this is still, and it still needs to grow to have more capacity and also more recyclates production. So you see it's moving in the same direction. Having also more recyclates production means also improving the quality of the waste streams and also focusing on design for recycling. If we look at the plastic production and end of life of plastic in Europe, just to give you an idea of what it represents. So the plastic production globally represents 391 million tons. And then from this, we have a demand of 50.3 million tons. And then instead of collection of this plastic, there is 30 million tons that are collected. And then when we look at the end of life of this plastic, we have 35% that are actually sent for recycling, and the rest is going to more disposal options like incineration and landfill. Looking at which type of activities we do within PRE, so of course we have a strong focus into the legislative framework, where we provide some insight into some legislation and especially how to apply them and implement them in practice. We develop some specific circularity tools through our working group and task forces, and we try to explain and provide some information about the recycling industry in terms of data, of course, but also in terms of legislative changes. And it's a big network, as you have seen, because there is more than 200 members that are affiliated to the organization. So it's also an opportunity to network. Now that the short presentation on Plastic Recycler Europe is finished, I would like to present you on how we worked with the data collection within the PRIMUS project. The first thing, and this is why it was important to have a short presentation on PRE, is that we are a member-based association. It means that we have different members that are able to provide data. We have facilitated this data collection because of the network and how this has been done. We have prepared a specific template that is tailor-made to the recycling processes and the recycling facilities. This has been sent to the member of PRE and also to the PRIMUS consortium. And then on top of this, we have then gathered the data. We have also done some cross-check to see if the data is relevant or not, if there is no problem, to ensure that the data is sufficiently harmonized and aggregated. In terms of renewal of the data, because of course this is a one-time data collection at this stage, the plan is to have a renewal of the data every 2 years to ensure that we have always relevant data that is available and also some database that are up to date in terms of environmental data. So this was the first round of data collection. Based on this, we will make sure to adjust the template to make sure that the data becomes more and more accurate in the future and more harmonized. And based on this, we will launch some further data collection. And also we have identified some potential data gaps that we will try to minimize in the future through other data collection rounds. So this was it to introduce you the data collection and our role in this eco-profile, but then I will let the experts talk more about the environmental part, and then I will give the floor back to Jonas.
Thanks a lot, Mathilde. Yeah, the data was finally collected and then landed at us at Greendelta, and we had then a look on the data and need to kind of also make it to us in the format we can work in our database with it. It found out that we had 22 recycling sites spread over across Europe. As you can see here in the map, it's very like focusing strongly on France, Netherlands, also Spain, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, Germany, Austria, also Great Britain here. It's a good point maybe to show that this is the data coming mostly like from, and it depends a bit on the polymer stream or the waste stream, but we have a data coverage from 2.8 to 29.6%. So we can cover quite like a large amount of data, which is important because for like having primary data, like primary production, it's rather easy. These huge steam crackers, you don't build them like next to each other, but the industry is very different for plastic recycling. They're more distributed. So to having such a number is already, I think, quite remarkable. The polymers we had a look on were most likely ABS, HDPE, PET, PP, PE, PS, and PVC. And we had the results either as granulate or flakes. And the waste streams were very often comprised as from households, industrial, WEE or ELV and construction sector. So this is where we got the data most often from. Later on, we don't only have like how much input and output is there on the material. Of course, we have data on how much wastewater is produced, how much chemicals are used, how much energy is consumed, how much fossil fuels have been used. So we had quite a comprehensive data set at the end of the day, focusing on the mechanical recycling part. So the part and the data collection was done in the mechanical recycling, where we focused strongly on size reduction, washing, separation, and the extrusion at the end of the day. What wasn't part of this scope in this study is the collection and sorting, which we added later on by ourselves based on literature data. So the PRIMUS data is like here in this case in mechanical recycling, the best we can do, but we will separately publish them for your convenience. A bit for the methodology. So of course we build up a methodology. We want to provide standardized lifecycle inventories for as much as we can do. Our limit was a bit that we need to have data from 3 collection sites or recycling sites, so we can have good amount of data being provided per polymer. Additionally, we want to provide also the lifecycle impact assessment for the Ecoprofiles, which we've also reported. A bit for the scope. Our scope was, of course, the same scope as Plastic Recycler Europe has. So we will look at the whole European regional context, and it's focusing only on mechanical recycling. And then to be fair, also we added the collection and sorting because that's also part of the data at the end of the day. From some LCA experts, we use a cutoff approach. So everything which it arrived burden-free at our life cycle, because it's already the second life cycle, the plastics had first life cycle already, arrived with a cutoff, and also everything which has afterwards the ability to be is ready to be processed has a cutoff, so there are no burdens discounted for this. What is taken into our system boundaries is kind of where we had the data on. We looked at, of course, size reduction, washing, separation, extrusion, but the waste which is generated and also the wastewater which is generated has to be treated, and this is also part of our system boundaries. At the end of the day, if we provide the Ecoprofiles, they will then can be packaged and then be used to generate recyclates in functional materials. So that was the whole approach. Of course, there's more to it, but we will report this in our methodology. Yeah, so a bit about how we did this and how the whole process went. So we will provide actually 2 Ecoprofiles because after reviewing the data, it made most sense to us. The main focus on PRIMUS, as I said, is the mechanical recycling. We will report here gate-to-gate data. So that's where we have the best data on. But to be fair and to make it comparable with primary data, we added then from literature data the collection and sorting. So we cover gate-to-gate, but also cradle-to-gate at the end of the day. Once we had Mathilde's or Pierre's data, we integrated into Open LCA. So we had to map a bit, at least the names of the chemicals or the quantities, and organize it to harmonize it a bit more and following logic. For instance, in one case, we had a production site which produced recyclers as a pellet directly. Sometimes we also have reports that some recycling facilities produce flakes. Of course, they need to also be then extruded to give pellets, etc., etc. So we had then, for instance, for some polymers, we have 3 sites, and they all the data together will be averaged by the amount of the mass they produce compared to the overall mass we have for this data set. This will be then a European data set having just the inventory at that moment. And then we connect it to a background database where we have the information for the impacts for electricity, for chemicals, for water, for additives, for waste, and can generate a European LCI data set. And this will be later on then also published. If you want to then at this stage, we will make it still average, and then we connect it on the European level with the background database. It's kind of our approach because the data we didn't have too much data to make it per country, so we choose a bit this option to have it on a European level. So we have now data for PET, PVC, LDPE, PP, HDPE, ABS, etc. Quite a lot of polymers which haven't been there before to that extent. Additionally, what is a bit unique, I would say, we'll also provide later on impacts, which will be assigned uncertainty values. So we worked a lot here with data quality, and a bit of specialty to our company. We also are assessing the plastic littering risk, which is kind of specific to the Plex database, which has been or is provided by our company. Yeah, and later on, as you proposed, we'll provide 50 Ecoprofiles within this project. We're focusing on the polymers which are in the scope of PRIMUS, so ABS, HIPS, PP, and regionalize energy transport and waste treatment according to the countries. So what we're going to do later on, we have the European LCA data set, then add like specific background data from the countries individually. For instance, transport in European countries are a bit different, and hence then can also assign different regions. So for instance, the waste treatment in Germany and Spain is different, so we account for it to provide the data sets every day. And this is how we're gonna provide the data sets at the end of the day, using also regionalization approach. A bit to what we did. So I cannot show you the real data because it hasn't been validated, hasn't been reviewed yet. But what I can tell you is we did some small approach. So first of all, we want to know is the data sets make sense that we generated. So we did a validation step. We compared our art HDPE, our recycled HDPE, versus the one which is existing already in the commercial database. So to be fair, there are only two data sets existing currently in the commercial data set. It's HDPE and PET. And we compared it here to each other. And if you have a closer look, for most impact categories, which you can see here blurred, they are kind of very close to each other. So for us, it is a good indication that what we did is not completely off. Sometimes LCA data can have a quite high uncertainty, but here it looks quite certain to us that the approach we did gives us a good result with fitting to already existing data. And then we also did something which is in the scope of PRIMUS. We compared it to production of primary material, as you can see here in blue. We took the data set for primary production of HDPE, and in red there is the impacts for our HDPE, and you can see that in all impact categories, the recyclate has a lower environmental impact. So maybe it's also kind of take-home message that recycling works actually, and the impacts are for all displayed impact categories here lower compared to primary production. How does it look like later? What we're going to publish? So we're going to publish Ecoprofiles per polymer, which are roughly 3 to 5 pages long. We'll give you information about the inventory. And this time we made some trick because we want to make it more transparent. We'll give you actually the data on what chemicals are used, how much electricity is used, how much transport is used, what is the side product of this process. I think this is transparency on a different level, which hasn't been done before. And this will also be later on published in the data sets. Additionally, we're going to provide you, for at least for the cradle to gate Ecoprofiles, some overview if you compare it to primary products, what the performance is. And as you can see here again, the environmental impacts are lower compared to primary production. And further on, we also provide the life cycle assessment with using the EF 3.1 method for the EF 3.1 impact categories. Here I want to raise a bit of awareness that we also will provide uncertainties because we are able to provide them using data quality approach, and then can also give a bit of the certainty about the numbers we publish because that is yet lacking a bit very often. Yeah, and most important for the LCA practitioner, we're going to provide data sets in two fashions, fully aggregated, which means you will not be able to have any clue what the electricity mix was, how much diesel was consumed, etc. But we're going to also publish in a semi-aggregated way, where at least you can see how much specific types of electricity chemicals are used. And this will be transparently also reported. This is quite good because the current Ecoprofiles are static. And with this, you can also play scenarios saying, for instance, electricity is way greener than in what we assumed for the future. And you can update those data sets accordingly. And this will be very helpful for the community. Said the data is currently under review, and we propose to publish it next year. Yeah, very short conclusion and outlook. So LCA in general allows you to quantify environmental impacts along the whole product's life cycle. We will provide Ecoprofiles are average life cycle inventory data sets, which are otherwise quite hard to get for cradle-to-gate analysis. In our project, we have data from 22 recycling sites, which the data was collected by Plastic Recyclers Europe, and we focus strongly on providing data for ABS, HIPS, and polypropylene. The data and the whole approach will be reviewed by our collaboration partner VTT. And later on, we will also provide some regionalized ecoprofiles in the future. Next year, at the end of the PRIMUS project, we're going to publish then, of course, the whole methodology, the data themselves, and the individual ecoprofiles to the public. And of course, it will not end there. In the next project, the STOP project, which is also we are part of and PRE is part of, we're going to continue with the cooperation and publish more ecoprofiles after all. Yeah, and that's from my side.
Thank you, Jonas. I think the explanation is quite interesting. We have a question online, but then we'll answer it in the Q&A session. So starting with the roundtable, there are some open questions that could be answered by Jonas, Mathilde, and Julia that are quite interesting, and it gives us another perspective of this eco-profiles. So the first question is, what are the main advantages of having eco-profiles for the industry? And maybe this one could be answered by Mathilde and Jonas.
Yes, thank you, Carolina. So I can start. Well, from the perspective of the industry, I think there is quite a lot of advantages to have eco-profiles. For sure, there is an advantage in terms of, let's say, commercial benefits, because then you can also sell your recyclates by having the information on how many kilo of CO2 the customer can save by using this material. So in terms of sale, it's like a very interesting point. It's also increasing, of course, the transparency related to the recycling processes and the use of the recyclates. So this is also a very good point. And afterwards, we also see that in the legislation, we have quite a lot of new points that are brought forward related to environmental data on materials. And we think that this also could be a tool that is used to have some further information that can be provided also to the authorities.
I think it already explains a lot. I can just add up for the LCA industry, which is more, currently there is no real data existing. Like we have a huge data gap for this. So maybe potentially people in the eco design phase, which is the beginning of a life cycle, actually the design phase, are struggling to see the benefits for recyclates, and having the ecoprofiles at hand and being published. This could be a major push for also integrating of recyclates, because then you see actually, if you just run the calculation already, what the advantages are of using recyclates.
Thank you. This is a quite interesting view, and it will support a lot of type of industry, the creation of eco profiles. The second question is what role can eco profiles play in improving the circularity of plastics? And even though you have explained this part in the webinar, maybe Julia, you can dive deep more on this part.
Yes, and it's really related on the first to the first question also. So in the end, circularity of plastics, or generally circularity, we've seen that a big impact is not only making recycled content or making sure that your product can be recycled. That's important, but the biggest impact you can make to your product is by including recycled content in the product and the environmental benefits that has, but also that's what circularity means, right? And so incorporating recycled content, if we can quantify the environmental benefits through, for example, eco profiles, then this helps for the uptake of recycled content in products with the need of companies wanting to improve their sustainability scores, let's say, because of several reasons, right? So generally, raising awareness and confidence would be also one. The more data there is in recycled content, the better, the more documented it is, and the more transparent the whole thing is, because then we, of course, can have parties that lobby against recycled material and so on. So to have clear and transparent data that one can use with confidence because it's reviewed, because it's developed by different parties, etc. That helps a lot. And yeah, generally to have your assessment backed up with figures that are backed up with data and models to really understand the environmental improvement, that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, it is a huge benefit, and in Jonah's presentation, he showed like what will be the impact of using recycled plastic. So this is quite interesting on having those databases. And for the last question on the roundtable, and then we have some Q&A session, is what are the key environmental impacts of plastic recycling operations, and how can Ecoprofiles help mitigate them? And this is quite related to the first and the second question as well.
So I will start with the first. So we ran the analysis. It strongly, of course, depends on the polymers, which we had a look on, but we could see for most of them that the electricity usage is strongly connected to the environmental impact, and also the waste which is generated, like the parts which are not recyclable anymore from the recycling process, that this is also, and the respective incineration has a strong environmental impact. Our data also allows to optimize the scenarios later on. So you could go for green energy, and you can also lower the amount of waste being produced, and then you would see that it's rather low impact overall. And I think the second part, Mathilde, is the best person to ask.
Yes, so I can definitely reflect on what Jonas said, because you highlighted like really that the waste that is generated through the process has quite an impact on the result afterwards. And definitely we see that if we have a waste stream, but half of the waste stream that is entering the recycling facility, like half of it is not recyclable because it has not been designed in a proper way that it can be recycled afterwards. We see that this has a lot of impact. So I will go back to the design of recycling principle, that it's very important to design the articles so that they can be recyclable in the future, because indeed, if we have this, then we reduce the fraction that is non-recyclable in the input material, and therefore we can recycle more and have maximize this fraction that can be recycled. So I think the eco profile is also a way to try to identify where we can really like improve the recycling operation. But it's not only about the recycling operation, it's also about the different partners in the value chain that can also improve the recycling processes if we manage to improve the quality of the waste stream at the very basis.
Thank you, Mathilde. And I think that Ecoprofiles is one of the tools that can help us to boost the recycling plastic as overall. So now we have the Q&A session. So I will share my screen with the questions. Now you can see my screen, right? And okay. And we have two questions that were written down on our chat. And the first one is more related to Jonah's presentation. That is, will the databases will be available in all EcoInvent systems models, such as cutoff, apples, and consequential, and optionally also as an aggregated multi-input output database, meaning that the products are not allocated according to a specific system model to potentially adjust the data to other modeling logic?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. So it's a good question. We just run in one issue there, that if we would publish the data as multi-input output data set, and means unallocated, we would like kind of also compromise the data we got with kind of from PRE. So we would share parts of the raw data, which is not the idea for this. So we can't do that actually. We will give them already allocated. I think it's still, according with the methodology, quite transparent what we did, but we need to stick to that to be fair. And hence it will be only in the cutoff system model. But though the data afterwards, you can still use the partly aggregated data to recreate kind of the data sets, but of course within the cutoff logic. Yeah.
Okay.
And Should I
Yeah.
just read the second one, or?
Oh yeah, if you want.
Maybe can I add something to this
Maybe.
point?
Yeah.
So simply clearly put, the life cycle inventory, there will be a lot of information there, not specific, not at all compromising the raw data we got, but more on average water consumption, electricity, that type of thing. And so with the life cycle inventory, then you can create your own data sets on the database that you prefer. In that sense, it has a lot of potential for afterlife in other databases or so, but you have to then make the data set yourself with that information.
Mhm.
But it's a good point for inspiration for sure for upcoming developments. And the second question, data quality and data collection. So our approach was on the slide. So as some recyclers use different materials and have different approaches, it would be a bit problematic if we all put them in one chart or one model and say, okay, actually this one recycling site out of 15 is using this special chemical. What we're going to do with the data quality, and that's where we use the data quality actually for, to make it a bit of an overview. But it's rather tricky how we did it, but it's going to be published in the methodology and first of all reviewed, but then published in the methodology, and maybe it's inspiration for you then.
What date approximately will this be published, Jonas?
When, or sorry?
Yeah, when will be published? It will be inside the PRIMUS project, so we are finishing the PRIMUS project in April.
Yeah, not directly then in May, but we need to also wait for clearance, so maybe May or June, roughly.
Okay. Yeah, just to give our audience a little bit of some dates. So I think we don't have further questions in our chat, and we are reaching the 12 o'clock. That is our timeline to finish this webinar. So thank you all for having this hour to learn a little bit more about Ecoprofiles with the help of our PRIMUS project. So if you're willing to learn a little bit more of our project, please check our website and join the community. And thank you, Jonas, Julia, and Mathilde for today's presentation and explanation.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We will be sharing the presentation and the recordings afterwards. Thank you. Bye.